Day 6 of Lions training camp kicked off today, and the fans were out in full force. So, what are some of the biggest storylines and news to come out from the day? We're going to talk all about it right now. What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit training camp observation. I'm Miko, and in today's video, we're going to go over all the biggest news, takeaways, and observations to come from the Lions training camp practice today. Now, today was a very special day for fans because they were finally able to go out to Allen Park and see the team practice in full. And with all the hype that's been built around this team, it's a really good thing for the fans as they are finally being able to see things with their own two eyes and be able to see who's making plays, who's standing out, and just in general, be able to bring some energy to the Lions practice, even though they're only, pretty early in the process at this point. Now, before we start talking about the actual practice itself, we got to talk about one of the bigger storylines that actually come out from the day, which was the return of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to Lions practice. Now, CJ's obviously been at practice every day, getting treatment for the knee injury that he suffered earlier this week. But today was the first day that he was actually able to take part in some of the drills, specifically position drills and anything that just didn't require him to have to be, a part of the entire team. So again, he's still on a somewhat limited basis, but him simply returning to practice and being a presence is something that everyone is kind of reporting out that had a really big impact on the defense. He was vocal, he was loud, he was very much himself, and even in his media availability, you can kind of just feel the energy that is coming off of him and his excitement to just be back and not to be missing any extended time. I've been saying for a while now that like CJ's importance to this team goes beyond what he will be doing at either the nickel or the safety spot. I believe he is the leader that this team has been needing for a long time. That emotional leader, that guy that's actually, isn't just going to lead by example, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But you finally have a guy that can actually put some bark behind the bite that he has. And he's really already kind of stirring up the guys around him, and it's only going to lead to better things, I believe, for this defense once the regular season starts. He's a guy that's, again, knows what it's like to win and he knows what it's like to find success in the NFL. And I think he's going to be able to push guys and not allow them to just settle and actually be able to, almost in a way, sometimes kind of speak life into situations. He was asked about Jamison Williams during his media availability, and we haven't seen a whole lot of JMO. But Chauncey still took the time to pump up his guy and talk about him in such a glowing way. Where again, even if there may be questions by certain people in the fan base, at least you have a guy on the roster who's willing to build up those around him and be able to really kind of rally guys, whether it's on the offense or defensive side of the football. So CJ's return to practice is a huge win for the Lions. And the fact that, again, that this injury really did turn out to not be super serious is a win. As for some of the biggest takeaways to come from practice, this was a really back and forth day when looking at both the offense and the defense. Overall, I would probably say from my takeaways from how things have been reported coming out of practice, I would say that the defense had a much better day, considering that, the offense kind of struggled when it came down to the 11 on 11 team drills and things of that nature. Now, early on, the offensive line was definitely proving to be more dominant when doing some of the same, O line, D line type of drills. The offensive linemen were clearly more successful in those one-on-one situations. Taylor Decker, once again, was really dominant. Jonah Jackson, again, continuing to be very solid. And in fact, from the way that it was reported, there weren't many defensive wins when it came to these one-on-one drills. And that's when you even factor in the fact that Panay Sewell and Halapoli Vatai were both sitting out today with possible injuries. Not really sure with Sewell because considering the fact that he did have a media availability yesterday, and by all reports, he seemed to be fine when meeting with the media. Now, Vita, it's a little bit of a trickier situation. We all know about the back injury that he's been dealing with, and we know that he had a bit of a scare a few days ago in practice where he did take a shot to the back. Now, the fact that he's missing practice personally doesn't make me feel good about the possibility of him missing time. But at the same time, it also kind of highlights the signing of a Graham Glasgow. The fact that you have Graham kind of gives you that luxury where if Vitae does need to miss time or if Vitae needs to take more of a reserve role, you kind of can afford to have that because Graham is a professional. He's been a veteran in this league and even in drills like this where it's one on one, he's being able to hold his own against the interior offense, the defensive lineman that he's going against. So yeah, the offensive line definitely took care of business once again when it came to the one-on-one drills, but things drastically changed once they moved into more 11 on 11 situations. And this to me is where like I get excited and I think the fan base as a whole should be excited because like we continue to harp on, one of the biggest question marks going into this offseason and going into training camp specifically was how was the defense going to respond? Were they going to be able to find that same level of groove and rhythm that they started to have at the end of last season, especially considering that they have new pieces? Well, if 11 on 11 workouts and practices are any type of indicator, it does look like this defense is finding their groove and they're being able to be more consistent as far as giving the offense fits and being able to make things really difficult for them. On the day, the Lions were able to create consistent pressure and be able to even actually get a couple sacks out of guys like Aiden, out of guys like Derek Barnes. Even Romeo and Julian Okwara were even be able to make some plays. Levi even got credit with being able to make some plays on today. And probably one of the more impactful and definitely one of the more talked about plays that came was actually one of the first plays of 11 on 11 when Broderick Martin apparently blew up Frank Ragnow. And again, Broderick is someone that I've talked about the last couple videos when we've done these observations. And if you can kind of notice a pattern here, Broderick is starting to get some of those first team snaps. He's starting to be able to at least be worked in with the first team or at least get more opportunities to learn on the fly. And again, I don't want to make any huge leaps and declarations of like, oh, Broderick's going to be the starter because I don't necessarily believe that to be the case. I think Isaiah Buggs is soundly fixed into that starting position next to Aleem. But with Broderick being able to constantly stack on days, I think it'll allow the coaching staff to have more trust in him because one of the biggest issues that they had last year was that Isaiah Buggs played too many snaps. And if Broderick can continue to show and learn and apply the things that he's being taught, it's only going to mean better things for this defense. Now, again, I think he's still going to be somewhat fixed into a reserve role, but it just makes you feel better if you know that you can kind of rotate these guys in. Maybe at some point in time, they do try to go with a bigger package, and maybe they try to put Broderick Martin next to Isaiah Buggs, and you're really just locking down the middle in the run game. Who knows what the Lions may try throughout the offseason, but Broderick Martin continuing to stack on good days is a great sign for the young rookie. Another rookie that's worth highlighting today, and we haven't talked a ton about it because, again, most of the time during these observations, we're really heavily focused on the first and second team. But in today's, we're going to have to highlight UDFA Steven Gilmore, who's playing currently the cornerback position and is currently lining up as CB4 for the Lions defense. Now, due to the fact that Emmanuel Mosley is missing time, as well as Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just now kind of getting into the rhythm of things, and Will Harris primarily playing that nickel spot, this has allowed Steven Gilmore to get a little more attention at the outside corner position. And today, by all accounts, he had a very good day, getting two turnovers, one as an interception and one forcing a fumble, and just kind of proving to be one of those guys, much like Starling Thomas, who's at least going to make it difficult on the Lions coaching staff when it comes down to thinning down the roster and figuring out which corners they want to keep. Now, it's worth pointing out that this is not just one good day by Steven Gilmore. He's actually been stacking on a couple days, and he actually had to almost be in a bit of a competition for the CB4 position to begin with earlier in the week. So again, progression in that direction and showing that he has, and able to win the coaching staff's trust is a big thing. I went into this offseason not really sure if many UDFAs would be able to make this roster, but guys like Starling Thomas and now Steven Gilmore are really making me start to second guess that and really possibly see ways where guys can kind of get onto the roster. Now, that may come at the cost of other guys who are more veteran type players, specifically looking at someone like Chase Lucas. But Chase has also been having some really good days at training camp as well. And so it's going to be a really interesting battle when you start looking at those, final 4 to 5 cornerback positions on who the Lions decide to keep and where they decide to build out the rest of their secondary. I think a lot of us at this point feel really strongly about Starling Thomas making that, roster spot, but Steven Gilmore might be able to give him a bit more of a fight if he's able to continue this trajectory, and especially once they get into preseason games, and if he's able to showcase that he can do the same things in practice and in games. But one other thing that I did want to highlight more so on the offensive side, again, trying to give a little bit of balance to these observations, is not just talk about the good things, but talk about where there's a little bit of a step back, or not even maybe a step back, but maybe just a bad day by some players. And in today's observation, we kind of got to talk about Jared Goff in that regard. Now, it was raining, and obviously, whenever you add rain to footballs, things get a little tricky. And there's a really good chance that the outdoor elements really impacted Jared Goff on today. But at the same time, we also got to give some credit to the defense. But in any way that you kind of slice it, Jared Goff did struggle today. Had a couple passes go a little short, wasn't quite perfect with a lot of his passes. And again, it's not a reason for concern, but when you're considering the fact that, hey, when the Lions have to go out and play in outdoor situations, these things could be a factor, right? Playing in outdoor weather, playing when it's cold, playing when it's rainy. It's not the end all be all, but if this becomes a thing, or at least it has been a thing for Jared Goff in his past, that like, hey, he doesn't always play as well in outdoor games, it's a good indicator of how drastically this can kind of impact the offense. They really did kind of struggle to find any type of big plays in today's practice. But on the plus side, the offense did find some consistency in the run game. Jameer Gibbs had a really good day running on the outside, which has largely been the case for most of the running backs on this roster. And he's even been able to show that he can actually, still be that weapon that we all expect him to be when in the passing game as well. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed another Pride of Detroit training camp observation with me. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to check out these videos. If you want more information on training camp or want to get a little bit of a deeper dive into some other players that really stood out, definitely head over to pridedetroit.com and check out Eric's latest training camp observation article, where he goes into a little more specifics on some other defensive players that stood out, what was actually happening in practice, the types of plays that were being ran, and exactly what areas of practice guys are standing out the most. You can also check out the podcast that Jeremy and Eric do together, where they basically sit down right after training camp practice and go through their notes and talk about some of the things that stood out most to them. So, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed the content that you're currently finding on PrideDetroit.com, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to leave a comment in the comment section. Also, if you were at practice today, let us know in the comment section what you loved most about practice today, if there was anything that stood out to you. And if you're new to this channel and you've never subscribed before, definitely do that today. Be sure to hit the notification bell. That way you can be notified anytime we upload videos like this or anything else in the future. Appreciate you guys checking out the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.